Hello, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Aesthetics, the Business of Beauty. So today, we're going to be talking with Jerry Diza, who's the managing partner at Pacific Reliance Medical Mergers and Acquisition Advisors. The company sells medical-based businesses, and Jerry Diza specializes in the medical spa space. He's a member of the American Medical Spa Association and also has a bookkeeping firm specializing in medical spa practices. He sold various businesses throughout his 20-year career, including e-commerce, manufacturing, retail, and restaurant businesses, but decided to specialize in the medical sector 4 years ago. He resides in Orange County, California, and sells medical-based businesses nationally. Welcome, Jerry. It's so good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining today and sharing with us your valuable time.
Thank you, Nell. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you. So before we get started, though, could you tell us a little bit more about you? I've read a little intro, but there's more to you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I am a managing partner at Pacific Reliance Medical M&A Advisors. Like you had mentioned, I've sold all types of businesses, but I've fallen in love with medical spas. And that's why I even have a bookkeeping firm that specializes in medical spas. It's a very unique industry, a lot of interesting people in it, and just very exciting to be in it at this time.
Yeah, oh, yes, absolutely. There's so much going on, and that leads us right into this question. So what is the landscape like now for medical spa businesses?
Well, for sellers, there's a lot of buyers. They really like the concept of a medical practice without insurance billing, right? And without seeing a lot of the pain and the suffering and the ugliness of medicine. It's more of, okay, they're coming into, to look better, to feel better, right? And so they're generally speaking positive people that are happy to see the doctor.
Right. Yeah. So yes, and who are willing to pay cash for it, because these
there are a lot of buyers out there. So I'll kind of just mention to you maybe the different types. We've got the doctors maybe tired of working at Kaiser, wants to go on his own. He wants to just go out and open up his own practice. And of course, med spas again are attractive because there's no insurance required, right? They don't accept insurance. You've got the doctor or the individual investor looking to buy a medical practice or a medical spa. You've got strategic buyers. Strategic buyers might already own 3 or 4 medical spas, and they're looking to acquire and add on to their portfolio. Okay, and then you have the big boys, the private equity buyers. So the private equity, they're looking to partner up with an owner and maybe grow it up even more, acquire more during the time that they're partnering together, which is typically around 3 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years. And then what they'll do is when they've acquired more of these medical spas, they'll turn around and sell it to even a bigger private equity group, or they'll take it public. They'll take it IPO, initial public offering, and take on the stock market. So you've got buyers in between from again the doctor or the investor who's all the way up to the private equity buyers. So it's an exciting time, like I said.
A lot of people getting into this.
And SBA loves financing medical spas because they fall under the medical practice category, right? And there's lending out there for med spas.
Oh, it's a perfect storm, seems like. Wow, very exciting time indeed. So what are the reasons that sellers might sell?
There's a number of reasons. And it's funny because I get asked that. I asked, well, Jerry, if this medical spa is doing so well, why does the owner want to sell? Well, there's a number of reasons, right? First of all, it's a business. At the end of the day, it's just a business. It's not their baby. I mean, it is kind of their baby, right? But it's not their kid or anything. It's a business. So, there's times when an owner is just tired, right? They've been at it for the last 20, 25 years, and they're tired. Okay. Or they may want to just retire, right? They're just to a point now, maybe they're not burned out, but they just want to retire now. Okay. Especially, and we saw a lot of that during COVID, right? When COVID hit, a lot of owners thought, you know what? I'm spending too much time in this business. It's time to go do something else now. Okay. So we've got, and then we've also got I hate to say it, but there's times when there's, divorce issues. Maybe the owner's going through a divorce, and maybe the wife is the partner. There's also partnership issues, right? Maybe the partners aren't getting along for whatever reason. Or they're just looking to go into another type of business. What I get a lot of is that I'll get an owner who says, I do training with Galderma, or I do training with Allergan, and I'm spending a lot of time doing that, and I really enjoy it. They don't want to have that location that they have to think about. Okay, so there's a number of reasons why people want to sell.
Right. Moving on, or retiring, or another opportunity that's more of interest. Absolutely. And then, so the buyers then, let's visit the other side of this transaction. What kind of buyers are out there? Tell us about who is out there.
Well, like I mentioned, right? You've got anything from the doctor who's looking to get out of Kaiser or working as a practitioner at a clinic. You have the strategic buyer who's looking to acquire more medical spas to add on to their portfolio. And then you have the private equity groups that are looking for the bigger, well-run operations, and many times multi-units. They're looking to buy multi-units. So you've got a gamut of all different types of buyers.
And you represent all different types and sizes. Yes. All across the country.
It makes it easier to sell it to a buyer because I know what they're looking for. I don't have to learn the industry. I already know what they're looking for.
That's very cool. So, but before we get, I just want to mention too to the audience that Jerry has been so kind as to offer to any of the medical spa owners a free evaluation. And all you need to do is just give him a call and let him know that you found out about him from Beyond Aesthetics here. Thank you so much, Jerry. I'll leave the contact information underneath. There'll be a banner with the contact info so that people can easily get in touch with you. Thank you so much for that offer. All right. So, and where are the buyers getting the money to acquire med spas then?
So if it's private equity, right, they've got investors behind them, and there's a lot of money on the sidelines right now, right? Because let's face it, right, you put your money in the bank, you're lucky to get 5%, right? But they know that if they put in a business, they're going to get, especially in a medical spa, right? The profit margins are really healthy in a medical spa. Their return on investment is much greater, right? So you've got a lot of cash out there from private investors, private equity, and then you've also got SBA that's lending, right? So SBA, Small Business Administration, okay, SBA likes medical practices, and they're very aggressive with financing medical practices. And of course, medical spas fall under that, right? So you've got bank financing and you've got investors out there.
Right. Perfect storm. That's what it sounds like. You're in the right place, Jerry, which is amazing. So this is probably a more intricate question here. So before you can sell a med spa, you need to place a value on it. Can you walk us through some of the important steps, and we'll drill down if we need to?
Yeah. So the value or the price of a med spa is based upon its profit margin, its profits. Okay. So the healthier the profits, the higher what we call a multiple. Okay. So the way we price businesses in med spas is that we look at the profit. So let's say just for discussion, the gross revenues are $2 million a year, and let's say it's running a 30% profit margin. So it's doing $600,000 a year in profit, right? Something like that. And if it's absentee run, and if it's in a good location, it's got good history, et cetera, it might sell for a 3 or 4x multiple, meaning 3 times or 4 times the profit margin. Okay, maybe even 5 or 6 times, depending again how it's run. So the big thing is, okay, how healthy are the numbers? Okay, and then how is the operations? Okay, so the buyer's going to look at, okay, let's look at the history of the sales, right? Have the what we call quality of earnings, the QOE, quality of earnings. How have they been the last 3 years? Have sales been going up? Have they been going down, or have they been steady? Right. So obviously, a business that's been going down, even though it's still got a healthy number, isn't as attractive as a business that has the profits going up every year. Right. So the buyers will, give a certain value to that. How is it being run? Right. Is the owner in there working at the medical spa 7 days a week at 80 hours a week? Or is he at the golf course, right? Is it absentee run, or is it owner operated where the owners, they're killing themselves? Location, you can't compare a med spa, let's say in a small town in Idaho versus, let's say, a major city like New York City, right? There's just the valuation going to be different. So there's a number of things that we look at. There's no one easy answer, but ultimately it comes down to what will the market pay for it, right? So it's typical that whatever valuation I come up with, I'll usually price it above what I think I can sell it for, because I don't want to leave money on the table. But generally speaking, that's what they're looking at, right? The financials. How are the financials? There's some times when I've had practices in the past where the owners send me their financials and the books and records are horrible. So these are the things that the buyers look at, right? To give it the value. And of course, my job is to figure out, well, what do I think the buyer in the market's willing to pay for it based on what I see? And so unfortunately, there's not one pat answer. There's a lot of variables when it comes to pricing a business, unlike real estate, where you can say, well, the Jones's houses next door just sold for $1 million, and my house is similar with square footage, so mine is going to probably sell about the same price. It's not like that when it comes to selling businesses.
No, you don't do comps. Now that's really a good point, though, because some business owners might think that there's a comp that they can be compared to.
Right.
There.
Yes.
And if you match up, then that dollar value could be applied to them too, to their business as well. But that's not true.
No, well, let me give you an example, right? You can have two medical spas that have the same revenue and the same profit margin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But and let's say, but the valuation could be totally different, right? So even though the sales are the same, even though the profit margin is the same, again, it goes back to how it's being operated, right? What's the history for the last 3 years? Where's it located at, right? So then there's all these variables that we have to factor in when pricing the business.
Sure, but you don't expect that the owner will stay with the business, or do you?
It all depends on the buyer, right? So going back to the doctor or the investor that's just looking to buy an investment or business for themselves, generally speaking, they'll be working in the practice more. But if it's like a private equity group, they're going to want to partner up with the owner, and they'll take over usually the operations in terms of the marketing, the human resources, the day-to-day administrative part. And they'll want the owner to stay on as a provider, and they may want to open up and keep building. So depending on the buyer, there's going to be a different request based on what the buyer's looking to do.
Right. Okay. So, but if an owner decides that they wanted to move on, how does that person get replaced?
So then we've got to look for a buyer. We make that known to the buyers that look, the owner wants to move on. They want to move on and retire, which is fine. And so by hopefully then the buyer has to figure out how to, if it's not a doctor, right, and they're going to come in or doctor, NP, PA, what have you, they're going to have to figure out, okay, well, if the provider is leaving, I've got to make room for another provider. I've got to be able to hire another provider. Right. And that goes back to also the valuation, right? You asked about the valuation. So ideally, we want to have the med spa that's absentee run. And what does that mean? But we don't want the owner. We want the owner at the high level view of the business. We want them working at the high level, not at the provider level, right? If you're an owner, you should think about how to work less as a provider and more as an owner manager. So you're running the business from a higher level. So let me give you an example, right? Like a McDonald's, right? When you think of a McDonald's, it's got operations and systems in place, but the owner's not in the back flipping burgers or working the cash register. The owner's probably at the golf course somewhere. It's the same thing with medical spas, right? Some medical spas will run really well where the owner maybe pops in, once or twice a week, checking up on the providers and the employees, or he may be working there again, killing himself 6-7 days a week. Right. So we want to talk about how can we get this to be what we call absentee run or semi-absentee run, so it becomes much more valuable, and of course we'll sell for a higher price.
Sure, and it's scalable too, because that's one of the other critical elements. If the provider is working in the practice, then they become the bottleneck.
That's right. I have a term. I call them. Yeah, we don't want the owner to be the rock star, right? But guess what? Rock star.
Because they're rock stars. They'll go wherever they go.
Right.
And similar to in the hairdressing business, hairdressers have their clientele that follow them wherever they go, and the same is true, I gather, in the med spa industry as well.
Yes.
Interesting. Awesome. Could you tell us you talked a little bit about the process, and maybe we'll go back to some of the valuation. They're kind of intertwined because there's a negotiation that happens back and forth. Correct?
Yeah, good question. So let's talk about the sales process. So of course, the first thing is confidentiality, right? So when you're thinking about selling your medical spa, you want to keep it extremely confidential. You don't want your employees to know it's for sale. You don't want the patients to know it's for sale, right? Because when a buyer buys a business, or they want to make sure that they have staff in place, right? So it's very, very critical that the confidentiality is maintained. Okay. Secondly, the next step is, okay, now that you've made the decision that you're thinking about selling your medical spa, we got to come up with a valuation. What do we think we can sell it for? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll request the last 3 years financial statements. So that'll be tax returns or profit and loss statements. Now, I get it, right? as an owner, you're trying to reduce your taxes every year. So you're writing off your trips to Hawaii, your Mercedes, your home remodeling, which is great when you're trying to save on taxes. But now that you're trying to sell the business, we want to show as much profit as possible. Okay, so once I figure out what that number is, I think this is what the profit margin is, and this is what the actual figures are. Then we'll come up with a price. Okay, and again, it'll be based upon how it's being operated. It'll be based on the profit margin and so forth. Okay, and so once we come up with the price, then before we take it to market, we've got to create a confidential business offering, or what we call it in the industry a SIM, confidential information memorandum. Okay, so that SIM we'll talk about the business. It's very specific to the practice, general location, the way it's being operated, the financials, et cetera, et cetera. But it won't have the actual name or address of the business because, again, we're back to confidentiality. Okay,
absolutely.
But the SIM is written well enough to where it should be able to attract an offer. Okay, so what'll happen is once I have the valuation and we come up with the price, then we create the SIM. Then once we'll take that to market, right? So we'll, of course, we have a huge buyer pool of MedSpa buyers. So we send it out to our buyer pool, and we also send it out on the internet on different business finding websites. And eventually, we'll get a non-binding letter of intent, and it'll include the offer as well as proof of funds. Okay, and of course, I'll do my background to make sure that whoever is putting an offer on the business is actually qualified to buy the business. Okay, so once I have that letter of intent, then I'll present that to the owner. If the owner likes it, then we go forward into what we call a due diligence process. Buyer and seller come up with a price. Then we go into that deep dive. They're doing their due diligence. That takes, again, between 2 and 3 months. Once we're getting closer to the end and everything looks good for the buyer, then the buyer will hire their attorney to draft up. Once the purchase agreement. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, the longest part is the due diligence process, right? That's what really takes up most of the time. But once they've gotten, they've gone through all the books and records and so forth. So once we have the purchase agreement signed by both parties, what'll happen then is that the attorney will wire funds to the seller's attorney, and then the seller's attorney will disperse funds to the seller. Okay, and then usually, again, depending on the buyer, right? They may want to ask the owner to stick around for a week or two. Or again, if it's a private equity, then they might have to stick around for 3 to 4 years, depending on what they're looking to do.
Right. So it could go a lot of different ways, depending on who the buyer is and what their requirements are.
Right.
If they're a partnership, there are lots of people involved, not just one.
Right? Let me go back to, I think I should cover the private equity groups this a little bit more thoroughly. So typically speaking, right, the private equity group, they're gonna ask you the owner to stick around for 3 to 80% of the value up front. Okay, but when they turn around and sell it down the road, the seller will also take a bite of that second apple, so to speak. Right, so they're getting money up front for the initial purchase, and then when they sell it again down the road, they'll get another payout when the private equity sells all of its med spas to another company.
So, and we talked about a single practice. What about if there are multiple practices?
Oh, that's even more. Yeah, assuming it's well run and the records are accurate and so forth. Absolutely, that's what private equities love. Right? They're looking for those multi units.
Multiple units, multiple locations.
Yes.
That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about some of the best sales or transactions that you've managed and some of the ones that didn't quite work out so well?
Let's start with the bad news first.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we like to end up on a happy note.
Unfortunately, yes, I will get sellers that come to me that will ask to put their business on the market, their med spa on the market. But when I go through their books and records, it's horrendous, right? They're not showing the actual sales, or they're not showing the cash sale. And again, in medical spas, there's a lot of cash coming through, right? It's not just credit card. So they're hiding a lot of these numbers, which makes it very difficult to sell to a buyer because, if you're not going to be honest, and of course we have to disclose this, right? Then the buyer's going to wonder, well, what else are you not being honest about? Right. And so unfortunately, I've had owners where, no matter what I do, it's just very difficult to sell because it's the buyers are just scared. And I would be too. Right. So unfortunately, it happens in terms of some. Yeah.
Okay. Let's visit that a little bit. They need to fix their appearing to the investors. So how long would you suggest that people give themselves to clean up their act, so to speak?
That's a good question. It's going to depend on how much work is involved, right? I mean, there's some clients where they come to me and everything is nice and clean, right? And they've got their policies and procedures in place. Their numbers are professionally prepared.
Mhm.
They're it's a semi-absentee run,
Uh-huh.
those I can put on the market, and get a buyer that'll buy for top dollar quickly. Then there's clients where, okay, I look at their operations and how it's being run, and it might take them a year or two, before we can put on the market and sell it. And that's okay, right? There's the last thing that as a seller, the last thing you want to do is have a fire sale, right?
Mhm.
So the best thing to do is, okay, let's prepare. If you're thinking about selling it down the road, let's talk about what we can do to prepare, right? So
Mhm.
that it's not a fire sale, so that when we do put on the market, it hits the market and it's very attractive and we're getting multiple offers. Okay, so that I can't answer your question as to how long it takes, but generally speaking, if if we can review your numbers a year or two before you're thinking about retiring or selling,
Mhm.
that's usually the best way to do it.
Right. Right. And someone once told me that any business should be run with the idea that they are eventually going to be sold.
Yes,
So
yes.
you're continuously putting value into the business so that you can sell it for top dollar, similar to a house that is appreciating. You do improvements to the house so that it will increase in value. So, same token, bring in new machines, add new services, add new treatments that will increase, that are more profitable, that will increase your profitability overall to add value to the medical spa practice.
Hmm.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's, like you said, a house on the market, you want to dress it up, right? If it needs new paint, if it needs the carpets need to be cleaned, if you need to replace that broken toilet, you want to take care of all that before you put in the market. And same thing with the business, right? There's things that we can do to prepare the business for the market and to be able to get top dollar for it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Perfect. So, what if a medical spa specializes just in laser treatments? If there's one specialty that they do really well, is that something that might be a hindrance to increasing the sale versus practice that has a diversity of revenue streams?
Yeah, it is usually nicer to have a diversity, but again, there's nothing wrong if let's say you're mainly a Botox shop, right, and you don't have any lasers, and I get it, lasers are expensive, right? A good M sculpt machine will probably cost you what 120, 150K. They're not cheap, right? So I
No.
get it. So
Yeah.
well, it goes back to, again, we've got to see how it looks and what the operations look like, because
Right.
again, you can have a lot of lasers, but now of course you're paying those lasers off, right? But even though your cost of goods and your labor costs are lower on the lasers, you're still having to pay for the equipment, as opposed to Botox, and fillers where yeah, the labor and cost of goods are going to be higher, but there's no big upfront initial investment.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Right.
so it's really hard to say. It's, yeah, ideally if you could have both of them, that'd be great, right?
Is the valuation, does it also include the equipment?
Yes. So we have to look at, okay, how much equipment is in there? Because remember, if let's say it's mainly a laser shop, okay, well, so that means most of the revenue is based upon those lasers. So that's going to be included in the purchase price. Okay, maybe I
Mm-hmm.
should back it up. When you sell a business, okay, the way it's always, when the buyer buys a business, it should be debt free, right? So if you have any loans on equipment, those all have to be paid off. Okay, so when the buyer takes over, we've got a nice clean business, right? There's no liens on it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so to answer your question, yes, generally speaking, the lasers should be paid off. Okay, now I get it, right? Let's say you just bought a new machine last year, right? You spent 100,000 for that machine. We can incorporate that into. We can look at the profit and loss statement and factor in the payments and make a disclosure that whoever buys the business has to take over the lease to the equipment. Okay, now of
Mm-hmm.
course that might change the valuation a little bit on the buyer's end, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still sellable.
Right, right, right. And what about the employees? Are there in the transaction or do you make adjustments in case the employees do not decide to stay?
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't legally mandate them to the business because they know how valuable the key employees are. So they'll incorporate that into the offer.
All right. Well, I think that's a good way to keep
It
the star.
is. But now you've got them for a lifetime, or as long as you have that business, it's, in my opinion, a good investment.
Yes, you want them to stay. They bring
Mhm.
in the client. Let's talk about best practices next.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure you have quite a few, or maybe you could highlight the three.
Yeah,
that you-
yeah. I've got a brochure that I'd be more than happy to send to sellers that are looking that are thinking about selling their medical spa. Just email me or text me or what have you. I'd be more than happy to email it to you.
If you
But
could email it to me, I'd be happy to help distribute it too.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah. But
great.
I mean, and again, we can spend hours upon hours on best practices, right? Because there's so much. But let's just, like you said, maybe you're asking for the three best. So let's go to some of the things why some of my deals have fallen apart. So first part is again the financial statements. Okay, that is so critical. I get it, right? You just open up your med spa. When you first opened up your med spa 3-4 years ago, you did it on a shoestring budget, right? You try to keep your costs down. So you didn't have the money to hire a professional bookkeeper, so you hired maybe your sister-in-law or your cousin, your Aunt Annie down the road to do the books, and that's okay when you're first starting out, right? But now that now that the business is matured, and I would think within a year or two, now that you've gotten the kinks out of the business, now you know what you're doing. By the second or third year, you should have your books professionally prepared, right? Because when a buyer looks at your books, okay, and everything's all jumbled and mixed up, it's very discouraging and it's very frightening because you got to put yourself in the buyer's shoes, right? They're putting a lot of money down here, right? This is their financial future. So if we're showing them books that aren't quite the way they should look, it's going to scare them away, right? And
Mhm.
let's say, but let's say they do decide to go forward, and now and they have an SBA loan, right? Small Business Administration loan. The SBA is going to hire an appraiser, and that appraiser is going to go through the financials, right? And so it's got to be able to pass the muster with SBA, right? So don't make it harder for yourself. Get your books professionally prepared, right? Your profit and loss statement, and have a P&L statement, a monthly profit and loss statement. A lot of times, I hate to say it, but the owners may look at the profit and loss statement once a quarter or once a year. Unfortunately, you want to be looking at your profit and loss statement monthly, right? You want to look at, okay, what are my labor costs running at this month? What are my sales looking like this month, right? Did my sales go up and down on Botox and fillers and went down on the laser side, or what's happening monthly, right? You want to track those numbers because the bar is going to be tracking. They're going to be asking for your monthly P&Ls. Okay,
Right.
so make sure that again that they're professionally prepared. Don't it's time to run your business like a business now. Right? I get that
Yeah. You'd want to know what income stream is the most profitable for you too. So
exactly.
potentially put more assets, hire more people to provide
Yes.
that service where you have a higher profit margin.
Right.
Just
Yeah, that's right. And if you
go
have
ahead.
multiple locations, don't jumble, don't mix all your numbers, right? If you have multiple locations, have a P&L for each location. I get it's going to cost more. I get that you're going to get charged more by your bookkeeper. That's okay. That's what you need, right? To run your business efficiently, you need to know what the numbers look like for each location. Okay. And the buyer's going to want that too, right? Have that done professionally. So that would be one of the best practices. The other thing, what I would say is have your business run like a business, not like a job, right? Buyers aren't looking to buy a job. They're looking to buy a business. What does that mean? Well, yeah, when they're buying a job, that means that whoever buys it, they've got to step in there and work the 70, 80 hours a week that you're probably working now, right? But when it's a business, the employees basically run it, right? You have a good manager that's keeping an eye on the cost of goods. You've got maybe, they're watching over your labor costs, or maybe you're doing that, but you're not the one actually at the business running it day to day, right? You want to be able to, again, go to Hawaii for the week and not worry about the business. Okay, so again, it goes back to not being the superstar, right? If let's say you're I don't know, Joy's Medical Spa, right, versus Orange County Medical Spa, right? You don't want the owner to be the rock star there. So keep that in mind. If you're a buyer, right, you're going to want to make sure that, okay, if the owner leaves, I still have a business that's going to be running in place. Okay, so that's very important. Let's talk about, there's times when believe it or not, I have a lot of owners don't have strong health records. They're not using a good software management program, right? So, and there's a whole bunch of them out there, right? Again, I'm not endorsing one of them, but Chronos, there's Aesthetic Records, there's Mevo. I mean, choose one of them, but get away from the paper and manila folder records. Okay. So
Adopt a technology.
yes. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, so
And
that's important. Again, your sales, right? A lot of times owners, as they get towards the end of their business, they're getting tired, which I get. That's not the time to let your foot off the gas pedal, right? When you're looking to sell your business, you want to keep the sales steady or even increasing. Okay, so with your practice, now that you're thinking about selling it, because that'll scare a buyer away as well, right? Or it'll just give it a lower valuation.
Right. It's just keep it moving. So to get that top dollar for your practice, you want to peak.
Yes. So lucky what we can do if it's not ready yet.
That's very generous of you, Jerry. Thank you. Thank you
Sure.
so much. We have a little time. So are there two more? You went.
Oh, okay. Sure. Curb appeal, right? If you have equipment you're not using, right? Or if you have outdated supplies, maybe get rid of those. Right? You want someone to walk into your business and be wowed by it, right? Especially medical spa, right? What if medical spas? I mean, they're all about looks, aren't they? They're all about aesthetics, right? Unfortunately, I've had some owners where I looked at their practice and they look tired. It's like, wait a minute, you're a medical spa. You're supposed to be vibrant and beautiful. So yeah, make your practice look and smell nice, right? If you have to paint the walls, right? If you have to, clean up the clutter, do that. Well, we want to show a nice, clean, organized business.
Yes,
okay,
it's medically oriented. It should be sanitary and look and smell clean.
Yes,
sanitary, but nice too.
I had one owner where and this is great. She had a medical spa and it was a storefront location, which is the best, right? You want the storefront location because it's free advertising for you. But when you looked at her advertising, you couldn't even tell it was a med spa. It was just not. She wasn't advertising the services properly, right? So that's where I would say, contact your sales rep, your Allergan sales rep, or your Galderma sales rep, and have them give you stuff to put on your window, right, or inside your practice when you walk into it. Because, look, they want the sales reps want to make more money, right? And the way they do that is by helping you make more money, right? So they always have stuff that you can use to help promote their products, which makes your business look more attractive. So take advantage of that.
Right. So that it gets into branding too, and you touched on marketing. So those are part of the operations that you probably
absolutely
did, right?
Yep. But that's another thing, the marketing, right? Don't they say that a healthy business spends between 5 and 10% of its gross revenues on marketing. Well, I've had some practices where I look at their sales and I look at their marketing, and it's like maybe 1 or 2% of revenue. But then you wonder, well, this is why your revenues are so low to begin with, right? You've got to spend a little bit of money promoting your practice, your business, to be able to get people in the doors, right? So, and a lot of small business owners, right, they're a little scared just to invest money in advertising. And I get it, right? I get it. You're already, working hard to make sure your business is running well, but you can't skimp out on the marketing, because that's what gets people in the door.
Right. They won't come if they don't know you exist, and they won't unless you market to them.
Exactly.
See, hear, or
and then now based on the marketing, you get people coming in, right? Look at your Yelp reviews, right? I'm not a big fan of Yelp because I think it's just there's a lot of people that will complain over nothing. But unfortunately, in this day and age, when med spas, they're good, the buyers are going to look at your Yelp reviews, right? So if you're getting complaints in there from patients, which you're going to do, right? This is normal. It's normal course of business. Make sure to address it, right? Don't just leave it hanging and as they're complaining about your services, respond to them on Yelp, right? Say, look, I'm sorry you feel this way. Please come in and we'll, let's see what we can do to alleviate your concerns, right? Do something showing that you're a conscientious business owner, right? Because that, and of course, that's going to go far with your patients as well, because they want to be heard. Okay, so that's another thing. I mean, you can kind of look at that as that's part of the curb appeal. Right, the how it's looking online.
Right, absolutely, totally makes sense. And what about a fifth one then?
All right, you don't have to really do a whole lot for, right? So in your database program, well, that's let's say 300 or 400 patients on membership, and they're paying, $100, $200, $300 a month. I mean, that's a nice revenue stream. We're not really doing a whole lot.
Right.
Okay, so that looks really, really attractive to buyers. Okay, so yeah, if they're looking at two med spas, right? One doesn't have a membership program, the other one does, and everything else being equal, that membership program is going to push them over to that side. But again, even if you're not looking to sell, it's just, in my opinion, a good source of recurring revenue. And
Sound me
of
like
course,
a
what it
business
do?
consultant now,
I know.
which a very good one.
Yeah, well, again, that I've looked through and sold and so forth. I see all their best practices. I see what they're doing,
Mhm.
and so I see, yeah, okay, I can see why your revenues are so high versus the ones that are doing really poor. And I look at how it's been operating. Yeah, I can see why you're not doing so well, right? You're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. So
Mhm.
that's why, like I said, that brochure I created was based upon those best practices, right?
I
So
can't
these are
think
kind of like the
of it.
secrets that I'm giving out for all the med spas that are doing really well out there.
Well, that brochure is a big service that and a nice tool that MedSpa owners can use so they can check the boxes to
Yep,
see how they're stacking up.
exactly.
Well,
Yes.
that's wonderful. I can't think of anything that would be nicer than to have something like that to start with.
Yeah. Another thing that I get is, and unfortunately, is there's times when I open up the business and I see a lot of skeletons in the closet, right? Maybe there's lawsuits pending. Maybe there was a disgruntled employee a couple years ago that's
Mhm.
that has a lawsuit. You might have a patient in the past that maybe they weren't happy with their injections and they're complaining about it. So those type of things we want to take care of as soon as possible. Right? We don't want the buyer to even have an idea that there's anything with legal or regulatory issues pending on
Right.
the business.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
So important to take care of those quickly.
Yeah.
We
Get rid of the liabilities.
Yeah, and unfortunately, at the end of the day, you're still a medical business. You're a medical practice, right? And you're a target, right? Whether we like it or not, you're a target.
Yeah. That's
So you want to take care of that as soon as possible.
amazing. Well, you've covered a lot, Jerry. I'm sure you could. You mentioned earlier that you could keep going, but you've answered the questions in a very efficient way. And thank you so much for joining us today. My pleasure too. Thank you. Is there anything that you would like to say, and as we close the show for this evening?
Yeah, it's just again, feel free to reach out to me. I'm not going to charge you for the consultation. I'm not a consultant, but I can help you maximize the value of your business before we sell it if we can get to it early enough. So yeah, I'm here for you as a resource. I can, if there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
All right. Well, there you have it. And let me just put up Jerry's contact information so that those of you who would like to reach out to him can do that and take advantage of his great offer. Okay, make sure I have it here. Here we go. And here's his contact information. And if anyone, would you mind if they called you? Because I put it down here.
Yeah, it's fine. It's usually better to text me because I am on the phone a lot, talking to clients and so forth. But if you
Right.
text me, I can send you a link to my calendar or get back to you when I'm off the phone, and be more than happy to speak to the owners.
Right. That's fabulous. All right. Thanks very much, Jerry. So
All
hopefully
right,
we'll
Neil.
have you on again. I'd love
Yes,
to, since we didn't cover everything, I'm sure that you could share, but we'll pick up the next time.
sounds good. Thank you, Nell.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Okay, everybody. Thanks again for joining today.